In this video, you are going to learn about numbers in JavaScript, and this is going to be our second data type. A data type just refers to the different types of data you can work with in a given language. We already learned about the string type right here in strings.js. We're now about to learn about our second type, which is the number type. And that's going to allow us to integrate numeric operations into our program. Imagine we're creating a game and we have a score. We store that score as a number. As people get more points, we can use the addition operator to add those points on. So let's go ahead and create a new place to mess around with numbers. Over inside of the basics directory, I'm going to create numbers.js. And inside of here, we're going to kick things off by creating a new variable. Although instead of giving it a string value, we are going to give it a numeric value. Creating a number is going to look very similar to what we did when we created a string. I'm going to make a variable let num equal. All of this is the same so far. Now right here, for the value, instead of using two quotes to create a string, we just type out the number. So if I want num to be the number 34, I type out 34. If I want it to be negative 12, I type out the minus sign followed by 12. If I want it to be 5.5, I type out 5.5. So numbers in JavaScript are super flexible. We can have whole numbers or numbers with decimal places. We can go positive or we can go negative. Let's stick with 5.5 for the moment, and down below, we're just going to log this value, console.log. In parentheses, what are we trying to print to the console? We're trying to print out the value of num. I'm going to save the file and run it from the terminal. Node, numbers.js. Right here, what do we get? We get 5.5. Now this is fine, but it's not particularly interesting. The real usefulness of numbers comes when you can actually perform all of those math operations on them. And all of the core operations are built into the JavaScript language. For example, addition. If I wanted to add something on right here, I could add on 2. Now I would expect 7.5 to print, and if I do rerun the script, that is exactly what we get. We can also use the minus sign between two numbers to subtract two numbers. So let's go ahead and take 5.5 and subtract minus 1. What would be the result? Well, the result should be 6.5. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding. Right here, I rerun the script, and I do get 6.5. So we have addition, we have subtraction. We also have multiplication and division. If I want to multiply two numbers, I use the asterisk, that is Shift 8 on your keyboard. Let's go ahead and take 5.5 and multiply it by 2. The end result, we can save the file, run the script, and right here we get 11. Last up, division. With division, we just use the / on your keyboard. That is just to the right of the period on your keyboard. Right here, we are now dividing 5.5 by 2. What's the result of that? That would be 2.75. If I rerun the script, what do we get? We get 2.75 printing. So we have access to all of these basic arithmetic operations, and that makes numbers in JavaScript really useful. Don't worry, I have outlined all of those 4 operations in the PDF companion for this course. So if you ever forget which symbol is for which, you can always refer to that. Just like we saw with strings, when we are combining various strings, we were able to have some defined in line, and we were able to have others come from variables whose values were strings. And the same thing is true with numbers. We don't have to define all of the numbers in line right here. We could have another variable whose value is a number and reference that. Let's go ahead and mess around with this. On line 1, I'm going to create a variable x, let x equal, I'll pick a value for x like 11. And then down below, we can add a calculation that actually uses the value for x right inside. I could say x plus 1. And then let's say after I perform that addition, I want to multiply it by 2. So right here, we have a slightly more complex little equation. And if we plug in 11, we can get the expected result by running the program. I'll save the file, rerun the script, and what do we get? We get 13. So what's happening here? Well, we have to remember that just like in real life on pencil and paper, the order of operations takes into effect in JavaScript as well. So we have my dear Aunt Sally, multiplication, division, addition, and then subtraction. That means we start with multiplication. We have this right here. 1 times 2 is 2. We then move on to division. Do we have any division? No, we don't. So we skip that. We go on to addition. We take 2, we add 11, getting 13. We go on to subtraction. We don't have any, so we don't actually do any. The end result is 13. We might have been expecting x to get added to 1 first, resulting in 12, then multiplying that by 2, resulting in a much bigger number, 24. To do that, all we have to do is use parentheses to override the order of operations, just like we would on pencil and paper. So right here, I can open a parenthesis, and then I can close one over here. Now we're saying perform this operation first, then use the result to do the rest. So this would result in x plus 1, which would be 12. Then we would multiply that by 2, getting 24. And we can see the different result right here. I rerun the program and we get 24. We were able to go from 13 to 24 just by adding those parentheses into the mix. So as we do work with numbers inside of JavaScript, we're going to be able to perform all of those basic operations, and we're also going to be able to customize the order of operations for the calculations we're creating. Let's go ahead and explore a different example using numbers. I'm going to delete everything we have so far and start with our age represented as a number. So let age equal, and my age is 26, you can go ahead and use yours. What we're going to do is add 1 to our age and then convert it to dog years, where 1 dog year is 7 human years. That's the common ratio between the two. So how would we get that done? Well, we can create a place to store the result right here. Let dog years equal, what is it going to equal? It is going to equal our age plus 1. Let's say we're having a birthday, so we want to add 1 first. Then we want to convert it over to dog years by dividing it by 7, divided by, right here, 7. Now we know because of the order of operations, we're actually going to have 1 divided by 7 happen first, then we're going to add that on to age. That is not what we want. What we want is to add 1 to age first and take that and divide it by 7. So once again, we're just going to wrap this particular part of the equation in parentheses right here. Excellent. Now we are overriding the default order of operations. That is where please excuse my dear Aunt Sally comes into the little lingo. The P being parentheses, those take precedence. Now we can go ahead and actually use dog years. And at the moment, when I say use a variable, the only thing we really know how to do with it is to just print it to the console. So we'll stick with that right here. Dog years. Let's save the file. I'm going to rerun the script using the up arrow and enter. And right here, I get 3.857 with a whole bunch of decimal places after it. And that is indeed correct. So I'm equivalent to a dog that's about 4 years old. Now, at this point in the course, we're not going to talk about things like limiting the number of decimal places or rounding up or rounding down, though we will cover that a bit later. For now, we're just focusing on the very basics of working with numbers. We'll talk about formatting a bit later in the course when we're actually trying to display things to users, like displaying things in the browser, where we want to have things nicely formatted so the data is clear and actually usable. All right, that is it for our little discussion on numbers. We have access to all of those basic operations, and I've outlined all of the operations as well as included examples of each in the PDF guide for this one. Your job as the challenge for this video is going to be to create a little program that calculates what percent a student got on a test based off of the number of questions they got right and the total number of questions on the exam. For the last challenge, what I did is I opened up a text editor and added some notes inside of there. From here on out, I'm actually going to use JavaScript comments to do that. A comment starts with 2 forward slashes. Everything from there to the end of the line is completely ignored by JavaScript. So I can type in anything I want, quite literally, and it doesn't matter because this is not going to be picked up when we execute the program. I could use this to take notes, to document what I was trying to do, or to talk about a problem I'm trying to solve. We can also put them at the end of lines, so I could put a comment after my console.log saying print the number or whatever would be most useful. We're going to be using comments quite a bit throughout the course, and I'm going to start using them right now to create a little challenge area down below. Challenge area. So down below, what we're going to do is start off with 2 variables whose values are numbers. We're going to have one for the student score, and we're going to have one for the max score. So we have a student score, something like 18, and a max score, something like 20. It's going to be your job to calculate the correct percent Down below, you're going to have a percent variable, and this is going to store the final output. So for that example, where student score was 18 and max score was 20, I would expect the percent to be a 90%, where each question is worth 5% of your final score. And then your job is to print the percent down here. Print the percent. Excellent. So to calculate the percentage, you're going to take the student score, you're going to divide it by the max score. That's going to give you some sort of decimal. You're going to multiply that by 100. So 18 divided by 20 is 0.9. Multiply that by 100 and you get 90. So you're going to use that formula to calculate percent. Take as much time as you need to get this done. You can delete each comment as you fill out the necessary line. When you are done, do make sure to actually run the program and check that 90 prints for these two inputs and mess around with a couple of different values and make sure they work as well. Take a moment to pause the video, and when you're done, click play. All right, how'd that one go? Hopefully you didn't have too much trouble with this challenge. I'm going to start off by creating student score. Right here, let student score equal 18. That's our first number. Now I can go ahead and actually delete that line completely. Excellent. You're more than welcome to leave the comments in place if you want to. Next up, we have max score. Let max score equal. For this test, let's say the max score is 20. So right here, I have max score equal to 20, and I'll delete the comment. The last number we're trying to create, let percent, is where the actual calculation happens. Now I mentioned we needed to take the student score and divide it by the max score. Then we want to take that value and we want to multiply it by 100 to convert the decimal, 0.9 in this example, to the percent, 90. Now in this case, the order of operations does come into effect. We have my dear Aunt Sally, multiplication, then division, which means that max score would get multiplied by 100. And if we ended up dividing student score by that, we would end up with a very, very poor score. So we're not going to do that. We're going to override the order of operations. We perform this calculation first. We take the result, multiply that by 100, and that is what's going to give us our final percent. So now we can delete the final two comments and add the last line in. Right here, console.log percent. I'm going to save the program. I'm going to rerun it from the terminal with the up arrow key and enter. Right here, we have the output from our first example. Right here, we have the output from our new challenge example. We are indeed getting 90 printing. Now, I did want you to play around with a couple of other values as well. For example, let's switch this over to a test with 100 questions. So now each question you get right is worth 1 percentage point. And I'll say this student did pretty poorly. I'll give them 41 correct questions. If I were to run this calculation, I would expect 41. Right here, that's exactly what we get. So these two values would be the input for the program. And as I mentioned, right now they're getting hard-coded. Later on, we're going to see these come from a different data source. That could be a database, or in our case, it's going to be the user typing some values into a website and submitting a form by clicking a button. For now, though, we're still exploring the basics, and we're going to continue doing just that in the very next video, where we're going to talk about a few different edge cases that come up when working with variables in JavaScript. I'm excited to get to that, so let's go ahead and jump right in.